Hey y'all, welcome to another edition of Zen and the Art of Bicycle Maintenance. Today we're talking about fixing a flat tire and straightening out the rim bar on the Patachi toke. Sorry for that bad impersonation of what I don't know. I apologize. I also apologize for this horrible lighting. It's just what it is today. And the final thing I would like to apologize before I get started is for this shirt. Long story, this is the shirt I'm wearing today. Looks like I'm about to go do an amateur magical act for a children's party somewhere. I'm not. This is just what I happen to be wearing. Listen, enough tomfoolery. Today's topic is serious. It's about trauma and abuse. It's about speaking your truth when you've been harmed. Big, deep topics for your friendly neighborhood magician today. I'm going to read to you an email that a friend of mine over on Patreon sent me that got the ball rolling on this. Got me thinking about this today. I've been thinking about this all day. I blew my spot that was quiet and peaceful to make a video. That's why I'm not in it now, and I'm wearing this magician shirt and the lighting is bad. It's a really hard topic. It's personal to me and I've thought about it for a long time. So you're going to get what you're going to get today. Here we go. Hey Jack, some compliments about my writing. Thank you. I wanted to ask you a question. Maybe it's worth a video, I don't know. We seem to share a very similar childhood, strict Christian upbringing, and a father who sometimes used violence. In your book, you stated that your father hit you exactly 5 times. You state it in a matter-of-fact way that implies, I feel, that you came to terms with the violence your father burdened onto you. Can you say something about the process of coming to terms with the feelings of anger and fear that surround this violence? Is it just that you sat in Zazen for a long time and it got processed automatically, that you simply allowed it to come up? Or is there something more to it? I'm asking because right now I often experience anger during Zazen. And at the same time, I'm feeling blocked so I can't cry. I have, right now, no access to grief. Do you know what I mean? P.S. Also, in my case, I can't recall all the times I got beaten up. Probably it wasn't too often, but at times it must have been brutal, so maybe I have suppressed the experiences. Heavy topic for warm summer times. Greetings to you from northern Germany. Okay, let's unpack this one, friends. Before we get started, I would like to offer a third apology. I have unbuttoned my top button. I now have gone from looking like the friendly neighborhood magician to the skeezy club promoter you would not leave your cousin from out of town alone in a room with. Thank you for accepting my apology. Okay, so my patron says, you in your book, you stated that your father hit you exactly 5 times. And when I read that, I was like, why? It's probably more than that. I mean, and I couldn't remember what I had said in my book because I do not reread my own writing because I am not into self-harm. Okay, so, but then I thought about it and I remembered how when I was writing this essay, I had really focused in on my memories of these specific, I guess you could call them traumatic events, and my overall relationship with my father. And as I was thinking about my patron's email, the reason I got stuck on coming up with ideas for this video today is because I kept thinking about how Zen practice has helped me process my grief. But then I realized, wait a minute, the act of writing and sharing that writing was a huge part of processing this relationship that I wrote about. And my patron says, can you say something about the process of coming to terms with the feelings of anger and fear that surround this violence, and speaking my truth as openly and as honestly and as vulnerably and as truthfully as I could without taking on the role of victim or just throwing my dad under the bus, although he might argue that I kind of did, but speaking my truth. So speaking one's truth my experience is a really, really, really important part of coming to terms with the stuff from your past that is causing you grief, that is erupting from inside you on the cushion. Speaking your truth and confronting the past. And this is not easy to do. Sometimes it has to come out somehow. And the channels for release are not always clear. I got kind of lucky because I turned it into material. I turned it into an essay that I published in the Sun, which is a fine literary magazine, and then I ultimately published it again in my collection of essays, Zen Confidential. So I had an impetus to give voice to it and to speak my truth. And part of the process of speaking your truth, I think, is speaking it to, in my case, having to have a conversation with my dad. And I didn't have the conversation until after the dang book was published. So I don't recommend that approach. And at the time, I must say, I felt beyond guilty about doing this. I mean, I didn't know how to bring any of this up with my dear father. And I just sat there knowing the book was going to get published, doing the edits, and then getting the book published, and then eventually it making its way into my dad's hands without me ever saying I was going to publish something. Just somehow some relative told him or something. It's a big deal when somebody publishes a book, and then you open it up and you're reading it and you come on that chapter where your son talks about some very intimate stuff from his own perspective. So yeah, afterwards we had to talk about it. And you know what? This was over a decade that I published Zen Confidential, and having processed all of that now, I don't regret a word of it. I spoke the truth. It's really important to speak the truth. Even if it casts yourself in a bad light, which 99% of my personal writing does, or even if it casts others in a bad light. I think there's a way to be delicate and gentle and careful while speaking about your experiences with other people. Ultimately, you own them and you get to talk about them from your perspective. And there's healing in that. There's a release in that. The truth wants to come out. If you can find a way to speak the truth, I think always in the end, the world is a better place and your life is a better place, and the relationships that are worth preserving and nurturing and bringing to a new level, which oftentimes means going down into a very deep trough, those relationships, all of these things are made better when you speak the truth, speak your truth. So part of my healing process was actually reading that book that you are writing that book that you read and writing that essay about my dad. So the second part of coming to terms with my anger, my grief, and my relationship with my dad, the problems in it. It's hot in here, but I'm not going to unbutton any more buttons. Don't worry. Look, my dad has changed a lot over the years, and he's gotten a divorce from my mom, and he's had to be very alone, I think, in certain moments. And he's had to now establish relationships with his large family including me on his own without my mom's mediation. And I think this divorce has in many ways changed my father. He's changed. You know, sometimes if like you got a parent who can't change at all, and you really want to process your anger by getting them to apologize or admit that they did something wrong, all I can say is, well, this is something my girlfriend said to me recently. She said, the only expectation that I have of my parents is that they're going to provide me with material for my practice, for my Zen practice or my meditation practice. That's the only expectation, is basically that they're going to disappoint me and now I have something to apply my Zen practice to. I think that's probably a good way to approach these things, because you know, if you're, it can be very hard to heal if you still have the expectation that that somebody owes you something. They owe you an explanation or they owe you an apology. You know, you gotta maybe find a way to let go of that. It may be the case that they do owe you an apology, but you may never get one, and you may never get one in the way that you want one. You may never be able to resolve this issue with the other person. So part of letting go of anger is, I think, finding a way to ultimately let go of your expectation that you can resolve the issue once and for all. So now we come to the question of Zazen meditation and practice. And this is a really, really hard one. I mean, there were times towards the end of my Zen practice as a full-time monk when I would be sitting on the cushion and it was just like somebody had thrown the rage spigot and it was just gushing and gushing and gushing. I said earlier, I'm not into self-harm. I wonder if that wasn't the version of self-harm, just sitting in your own rage. There were a lot of things happening in our community at the time, and I was very upset. And, you know, truth be told, sometimes that is what happens during meditation. I forgot what I was going to say. Listen, here's my point. You sit down on the cushion and you're like, you're getting it, you know, and it's you feel, and the teachings are, and you get, boom. But sooner or later, like something comes up, and it's like I was holding a tiny little infant, this beautiful little infant the other day, and I was looking in his tiniest face, and he was like, had that thing, you know, where he's like going like this, and then I could see something coming up, and I like literally watched it rise like a bubble of vomit, and I watched it come up his throat and he spit it up on me. That's kind of what happens during meditation. This vomit bubble from your past comes up and it spits up all over your Zazen practice, in your lap and on your meditation. And it can be really, really, really hard because you feel like the meditation should be curing that. You don't want to sit in that spit up, right? You want it to go away. You want it to be processed. I mean, one of the things my patron asked me is, did you just sit with this for a really long period of time and eventually you sort of absorbed the anger, trauma, rage, fear, tears, sadness through your practice? And it's a really important question, and maybe we should just ask it. Just put it out there. Is there a role in meditation, in Zazen, for processing grief, for moving through and past our traumas? Is there a place for that in Zen practice and meditation? Is that a byproduct of Zen practice and meditation? Or if that stuff is really coming up, Has Zen practice and meditation given you eyes to see it, and now you have to decide what to do with it? Maybe you see a shrink. Maybe you go to a therapist. I don't know, maybe you even need to get on some psychiatric medication to process the grief or depression or whatever. Maybe you need to give a call to your dad or to the person that's come up on the cushion that harmed you, right? I mean, I have seen in my Zen peers, and I have done this myself, a fallacy, which is something comes up on the cushion. My Zen practice has presented me with the truth. Hey, you're angry about something. You're upset about something. My Zen practice brought me the truth, right? And then I said, well, Zen practice, you can fix it. You brought it up, you fix it, you know? And that may not be the role or purpose of a Zen practice. It's a wisdom tradition. It's not necessarily a psychiatric healing tradition, okay? So I just want to bring that up and put that out there. Listen to, look at, be conscious, aware of, and awake with what happens in your practice. Don't ignore it, don't fear it, and don't expect your practice to just sort of fix it. I mean, this is something I saw a lot of monks do. They would have like, stuff would come up on the cushion for them, and they felt like that was enough. And then they were real jerks in real life. Anger issues, lying to themselves, lying to others, behaving in a bad way within the community. And, you know, I did all of these things and worse myself. So a spiritual practice is not a panacea. It's maybe not the best or at least only way to deal with anger, rage, grief, trauma, and a lot of other personal psychological issues. But boy, what a gift the practice is, because you cannot hide on the cushion. You will have that little infant within you spit up into the lap of your practice. And then you got to look with and deal with what comes up. It seems to me that the Zen practice and just sitting in silence on a cushion, it's an activity that's there for us and with us through the good times, through the bad times. It's kind of like standing at the very top of the cliff and looking down and seeing the big picture of our lives. And maybe there's a tiny little moment down there in one of the houses, in a room inside that house, where you're having a really bad moment with your dad. And that's a memory, right? You can focus in on that moment in your Zen practice. You can work with it by holding it, almost like a koan, holding the grief. Like, what exactly do you remember about that day or those experiences? Is your mind telling you a story? Has it been telling you a story about those experiences for the last 10, 15, 20 years? What exactly happened? Do you remember it? You can hold the stuff that produces anger and grief in your practice. You can also just sit with the grief and sit with the anger. That's something that can be kind of fun. Watch the anger. What does it feel like? What are the particular qualities? Is it like smoke and your brain can't breathe from all that smoke? Is it filling your head? Is it a feeling of like you feel like you're a jack in the box and you're getting wound tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and you explode out of the box? Is that what it feels like when you're sitting on your cushion? What's the physical sensation? Physical / emotion / proprioceptic feeling in your body of the anger. you can sit with that too in the practice when you're meditating and the anger comes up. I mean, there are different ways to practice with these things that come up, but also fundamentally, everybody has their bag of problems, you know? I mean, maybe there's somebody out there who was born rich and their parents were so good to them that they're soft now and the world is beating the heck out of them. They're carrying that onto the cushion with them. Why weren't my parents more disciplined with me, you know? I mean, people come to the cushion sometimes with problems that are so dark, you cannot imagine it. I mean, people came to me when I was doing a practice of meeting privately with students during a retreat, and they would come to get meditation instruction. And everybody is carrying their bag of problems. And you sit down on the cushion for a weekend retreat and you spill that entire bag of problems out in your lap. And you have some choices as a practitioner. And sometimes you're just going to sit there and you're going to stew in rage. And that's just what's going to happen. And it's going to be a total waste of your sit and your life and your energy. And you're just going to want to jump out a 50-story window at the end of that retreat or that sit. Other times, you're going to feel like something shifted. And you're going to feel like you will never go back to being the same person because you passed through something, right? No matter what happens on the cushion, in some sense, it doesn't count. It doesn't add up to anything, good or bad. Really, that's not what the practice is about, and that's why the practice, I think, can be so helpful. You can see through yourself, even where it's most opaque, where the pain is the richest and the deepest. I mean, and even if you're sobbing on the cushion, which happens a lot at a retreat or in a meditation, if you're sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, you still don't have to identify with or as fundamentally that pain. I think practice, it's the practice of being bigger than this thing right here, this human being with his mistakes that he's done and the mistakes that have been done to him here on this planet. I mean, in closing, one of the things that I have learned is that it's a lot easier to get over, for me anyway, the bad things that have been done to me as opposed to the bad things that I have done to others. So in many ways, one of the ways that I've sort of processed my grief and my anger around, say, my relationship with my father is just seeing how just realizing and remembering how poorly I treated my other family members when I was young, and how I've carried a lot of that bad behavior into my life as an adult. I mean, we're so imperfect. I mean, every one of us, your dad tried his best, your mom tried her best, she did the best she could, he did the best he could with what he had in those circumstances. So anyway, we can see the truth about our parents and see the truth about ourselves through that. Process our grief through meditation, through writing, through speaking our truth to others, through going to therapy, through speaking with our siblings, through speaking to other people who have been through these same things, through apologizing to those we have harmed and asking maybe for an apology from those who have harmed us, speaking our truth, sitting on the meditation cushion. However we do it, in the end, I think we're all just human, and all of us are trying our best. and our hardest. And I don't know about you, but I have got to go pull a rabbit out of my hat for a bunch of children at a children's party because I am a musician, because I am wearing a musician's black shirt. All that's missing is my cape and a mustache that's curled at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to make me stop doing this accent, you can go to patreon.com/showsonjackhobner. If I get 7 patrons in the next week, I will stop doing this accent. If not, for the rest of my life, I will speak like this. Showson Jack Hobner, the magician. Thank you very much for watching. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit notifications, and leave a comment in the comment section below, letting me know and others know how you process grief and anger in your life or on the cushion. Thanks, friends. See you next time. Hopefully not in this shirt.